Is God evil, and are we engaged in just a cruel game by this God? We talk a lot about this on my channel in terms of Gnosticism, that banned version of Christianity that reveals that the God of the Bible isn't an kind, loving God, but rather an evil being of shadow that is trapping souls here on earth. We talk about that a lot on my channel. But today we're going to be taking a look at one of the biggest contradictions in Christianity that proves that God is either evil or does not exist. And this is one of the biggest reasons, one of the main reasons why I ended up leaving Christianity. For those who don't know, I used to be a Christian. I grew up in a strict Christian household and I was heavily indoctrinated. And I have RTS, or religious trauma syndrome. And I eventually left the church, and it took a very long time to leave and deal with all the different trauma that goes along with that. But today we're taking a look at this idea of why God is, engaged in this cosmic game. We're taking a look at one of the biggest contradictions in Christianity. It's going to be good. You don't want to miss it. Let's begin. But before we do, please like and subscribe. Help us spread information like this. When you hit the like button, it tells the algorithm to spread it around. I appreciate it. Also, if you enjoy my work and you want to see this channel grow, you can support it by becoming a member on Patreon or joining right here on YouTube. And when you join any tier on Patreon or tier 2 or higher on YouTube, you get access to all of our members only videos. We have a new members only video coming out right after this one. And it's all about the secret connection between Hinduism and quantum mechanics. It's going to be really good. We're exploring Advaita Vedanta and the ideas of Erwin Schrödinger. It's going to be great. So if you support there, you can be a part of that and have access to all of our members-only videos. Also, there are scammers in the comments. It's been a lot of them lately. I see them on Instagram, on YouTube, all over. There are people claiming to be me, making fake profiles, DMing people, replying to comments, saying to join my WhatsApp, join my Telegram. I don't have a WhatsApp. I don't have a Telegram. That's not me. Don't fall for it. Also, there are people and groups out there who don't like what I'm doing and don't like what we're doing and are spreading a lot of misinformation and disinformation about me and what we do. So just be on the lookout. Use logic and reason, and don't fall for the BS. Here we go, my friends. Is God evil? Are we involved in just a cruel, sick game by this God? Is this being real? We're going to take a look at one of the biggest contradictions in Christianity. The reason why, one of the big reasons why I actually left Christianity. It's a very important thing to consider, especially if one wonders if God exists, if God is a good God or a cruel God, or if hell exists, if the Bible is true, etc. This is really important for answering those questions. So that's what we're talking about right now. Now, as we do so, I'm going to be reading some excerpts from an article written by Lilith Hellstrom. And the title of this article is "You're Angry Because Your God is a Dick." What a fun and imaginative and controversial title. I like it. So, like I said, we are going to be reading, I'm going to be reading some excerpts from this because I think it highlights what we're talking about well. And so if you enjoy some of the things that I read, make sure that you go support Lilith Hellstrom over on medium.com. Go give them a follow. I follow them. They post a lot of very interesting articles, and I like the name, Lilith Hellstrom as well. Great name. So let's just dive right into this. And so Lilith says, basically what Lilith's article is about people coming up to Lilith, Christians coming up to Lilith and trying to get her to believe in God. And probably a lot of you have had this experience of Christians coming up to you, trying to get you to believe in God, trying to convince you to believe in God. And once I left the church, I had that happen to me all the time, constantly. But growing up in the church, you'll see why this is one of the major issues that I had. So essentially, there's this idea here in Christianity, Lilith is saying that people are coming up to her and saying, hey, you're just not trying hard enough to feel that God is real. And Lilith replies by saying, how am I not trying hard enough if I'm not getting any evidence? So essentially, here's the idea, is that Lilith is saying, hey, because this is a big component of Christianity, is feeling the love of God, or feeling the Holy Spirit, or feeling Jesus in your heart. And look, I never felt any of that, okay? Because look, when you go to church and you're with a community and you're singing in a group, of course you're going to feel things, right? That's what happens in a lot of religious ceremonies. Religious ceremonies are designed specifically to invoke feelings. You're engaged in a group, you're engaged in a ritual. It's naturally invokes feelings. And people usually equate this with feeling the love of God or the Holy Spirit, etc. It's the same type of thing when you go to a concert. You go to a concert and you see a band you like. You're going to get all excited. You're with your friends. You feel like, oh man, this feels so great. But when you're in a religious setting, this gets equated with, feeling the Holy Spirit or whatever. Now, me growing up as a kid, I never felt the Holy Spirit or whatever. So this idea of, well, you should believe in Christianity because if you accept Jesus in your heart, you'll feel and you'll know that he's true or whatever. I mean, that's not enough. You need to have evidence as well. And so Lilith is essentially saying, hey, I need evidence in order to believe this. Now, here's where a very interesting thing comes in, and you'll see why. So Lilith says, then they start saying that there is evidence in all the animals and plants, even though there isn't, and they can't demonstrate this proof scientifically. They say it all has to be created by an intelligent being, even though we've demonstrated scientifically that other realities are possible. So there's this idea here, and I get this a lot in Christianity, and this is where I'm coming towards. The point that I want to make is that in Christianity, it's said that if you don't believe in God, if you don't believe in Jesus, if you don't believe that they're real and accept them into your heart, you don't accept Jesus into your heart, you're going to burn in hell for all eternity. And so obviously this doesn't seem like a very loving thing for God to do, but how Christians try to explain this away or to account for it is to say, well, it's so obvious that a God must exist because look, the evidence for God is all around you. It's glaringly obvious that God exists. So everyone deep down secretly knows that God is real and God exists. They just don't want to believe in God because they want to go out and have fun and sin. This is essentially what I was taught and the general belief in the church that I grew up in. And this was generally the idea, right? That, oh, it's so obvious that God exists. Everyone, even atheists, they secretly know that God exists. They just want to go out and have fun and sin. They don't want to acknowledge it. So this is sort of the idea, how they get around the idea, oh, well, God sends people to hell because they could have believed in him. They had every opportunity to, and everything points to his existence. Well, the fact of the matter is that it's extremely unclear that God exists. This idea that it's put forward in Christianity, that it's blindingly obvious that God exists, is not true whatsoever. If you actually take a look at it, it's incredibly obscured. There are thousands of different religions out there, all claiming to be the one final truth. And what evidence do we get that the God of this religion is real? We get a book that is thousands of years old with stories about a guy doing magic tricks in them. And we're supposed to take that and as evidence that this God is real and this God is true. The problem is that this is not proof at all. And if you think about it, if God is all powerful, God could clearly make it apparent that he was God. God could clearly and easily write on the moon so that everyone could see Christianity is the one true religion. Or you could think of a million different ways that God could make it glaringly 100% certain that that was the truth and that was the religion that one must follow to be able to be saved and go to heaven and avoid hell. Yet God doesn't. So the thing here is that either God doesn't exist or this is a cruel game that God is playing and God is evil, because God is supposed to be an all-loving God. So an all-loving God would not make it extremely difficult to know if he is real or not, and send you to hell if you get it wrong. That's clearly in contradiction with the properties of a loving God. An all-loving, all-powerful, all-knowing God would not make your eternal damnation hinge on something with little to no evidence supporting it, when this God would have the capability of making it blindingly and obviously clear. Or the alternative is this is a cruel game. God gets some sick satisfaction at throwing people in the world, making it extremely difficult to tell if he even exists or not, and then sending them to hell if they get it wrong, especially when there's thousands of different religions to choose from. And I remember growing up, and when I started really questioning Christianity, this was something that really started to push me towards the decision towards leaving Christianity. Because when I started questioning Christianity, I started studying all the evidence for it. And guess what? There's not very much evidence for it. People point to things like the prophecies. Oh, look, Jesus fulfilled all the prophecies. It's like 1,000,000 to 1 that Jesus could have fulfilled them all. The prophecies are a bunch of BS. They're very vague, very general. They talk about, oh, wow, you can see, in the Bible it prophesied that Jesus was going to get crucified. It's like, no, nowhere in the Bible is it prophesied that Jesus was going to get crucified. There's a verse in the Old Testament in one of the songs about something like, it's been a while since I looked into this, but it's something like a lion biting the hands of someone or something. They're like, oh, well, the lion biting the hands, that's like the nails in Jesus' hands. That's the prophecy. He fulfilled it. No. So, because I remember as a Christian, the prophecies were a big deal. It's like, oh, wow, that's a lot of proof for Christianity. If you look at the prophecies, Jesus fulfilled them all. The prophecies are extremely vague, and it's a bunch of BS. I've looked at them all. And there's just countless things like this where it's not at all. I mean, if you look at, things like evolution contradicts the Bible in a number of ways. And that's why a lot of people believe that evolution isn't true, but there's so much evidence for evolution. It clearly is. And so you have this idea of a God who, if really existed, and your eternal soul hinged on the belief in its existence or not, they could make it easily known to all the world in an instant. Like I said, I think that was one of the examples I gave when I was questioning Christianity back then. Why doesn't God just write it on the moon? Why not? And it's like, oh, because one of the ideas back then was, oh, well, God gives everyone free will and people choose to do bad things. And that's why God lets people go to hell, because they could have chose to believe in him but didn't. So now, again, how is that free will, really? That argument there is also very flawed, because this idea of, oh, well, God gives everyone free choice and free will. How is that free will? So imagine that I had, let's say, a partner. I'm like, okay, either you love me or I'm going to torture you forever. That's a very sick idea of freedom or free will. Like, what kind of choice is that? And what kind of sick God would want a love like that? Either you love me, even if you don't, you're free to. You don't have to love me. It's okay. You have free will. You're free to do what you want. You're going to be tortured for eternity. going to burn in the lake of fire forever, but that's your choice to make. And so Christianity is riddled with contradictions like this. And it clearly shows that, again, either this God does not exist or is playing a sick, cruel game. And we talk a lot about Gnosticism, and that's why the Gnostics looked at the God of the Bible as being evil. They read the scriptures, and they saw the actions of this being and concluded, hey, you know what? This God, it's not so nice. It's an evil being, a lesser being. A being that isn't God, but just claims to be God. Now, I don't believe that this God exists at all. I don't believe that it exists and it's an evil God. I believe that this God is just a projection of humans, a human psyche, a projection of a certain kind of archetype, a projection of dominance and control and power. It's an idea, but this idea is very real and keeps humanity shackled. Now, I want to read a little more from what Lilith says. Lilith says, they're saying that he's all powerful, even though he's so weak, he's hiding from me, apparently. And that's my point as well. That this God, it's almost like this God is hiding. It's like a sick game that this God is playing. If Christianity is true, it's this weird, sick game. And that's when they start freaking out and saying to me that I just don't accept any proof, that I'm stubborn and that I'm closed-minded. And I have had this experience as well, where it's like, the evidence is everywhere that God exists. And it's like, no, not at all. Quite the contrary. Now, there is evidence that this is a structured and organized existence, and that this is a world of structure and organization, but it doesn't, and that it must be grounded in eternal principles. But it doesn't prove, and that's the thing, is that yes, rationally, you can come to the idea that there must be a foundational, self-grounding, organizing principle for reality to exist. Yes. Now, can you call this principle God? Sure. If you want to, you could call this principle God. So, rationally, must God exist? Well, if you define it as a self-grounding rational principle, yes. But that does not prove by any means that the God of Christianity exists. All it does is prove that a self-grounding, eternal, organizing principle must exist. Not that Jehovah, who created the earth in 7 days and sent Jesus to die on the cross for your sins, exists. There's no connection there whatsoever. All there is that there's a self-grounding eternal principle that organizes existence. Now, of course, I believe that exists, but I believe that is in terms of us as eternal frequency patterns, as the universe experiencing its mathematical nature through itself. In other words, I believe, through my years of rational study and intuitive exploration, that reality is an organized system of eternal frequency patterns that is expressing itself through various bodies, various incarnations, to experience its diverse transformations. It's a system of mathematical frequency exploring its different transformations across all eternity. This has nothing to do with Jesus Christ. This has nothing to do with the God of the Bible. And this accounts for the rational ordering and structuring and mathematical beauty that we observe in nature and reality and all around us. So it's very frustrating when it is proposed by Christians or Christianity in general that there is evidence for God, indisputable evidence for God all around us. Yes, there is indisputable evidence for a self-grounding, eternal organizing principle, not the God of the Bible. So, Lilith says, they say that skeptics can just say no to anything and refuse any evidence, even if it's staring at us in the face. They start shouting that I have to prove God's not real. They don't have to say anything. And I know they're mad at me, but their God gave me 0 reasons to believe in him. In fact, I got a lot of the opposite, as his followers mistreated me and tried to take over this country and hurt people. And that's another good example. If you look at the actions and if you look at history and all of the atrocities that have occurred in the name of Christianity, this is a lot of evidence to support the fact that this is not a loving ideology. This system does not produce a world of love and acceptance. It's quite the opposite. It promotes a world of division and hatred, as Christianity often, teaches that, LGBTQ is a sin, that, so just, I don't have time to go over all the different restrictions that it imposes on people. It's promoted slavery. It's had so many different violence, especially against women. It says that women is lesser than men. You could go on and on about all the terrible things that the Bible and Christianity in general supports, which is a lot of evidence contrary to a loving God. Lilith says, if God is real and he gave them no evidence to believe in him, that's a problem. The fact that he made existence something you can argue about when choosing him is the only way to have a good afterlife sounds like a bad idea. That's exactly right, and that's my point. So if God is real, he gave no evidence to believe in him. And that is a problem. The fact that he made his existence something you can argue about when choosing him is the only way. And that's a lot. So for anyone objecting by going, oh, but there is so much evidence, even the fact that we're arguing about it, even the fact that there is an argument about it at all, shows there is not sufficient evidence. If it is so important that your eternal soul is on the line and this being is all powerful, this being should make it so clear that there are no arguments for its existence. Why is that something? And people will go, oh, well, it's about free will. Free will has nothing to do with it. Why? How about this? God's all powerful, right? Why can't God just snap his fingers and immediately put within everyone's mind the knowledge that he exists? Not that you have to believe in him, but just to know with certainty that he exists. You wouldn't be violating free will, because just because you know something exists doesn't mean you automatically have to, accept it and become Christian. You can know God exists and still deny God. But the fact that we even have any kind of debates at all shows that there's insufficient evidence for it. And that's the nefarious thing, is that, and what I was taught, it was like, oh, well, everyone does secretly know that God really exists. And people believe this. People legitimately believe. I believed it. Most of everyone I encountered in the church believed it. The belief that everyone secretly does know that God exists, but they choose not to believe in God just because they want to sin and have a good time. That's ridiculous. If this being actually existed and you would be tortured for eternity and you really knew that this being existed, I don't think that you would be like, you know what? It's just because I want to have sex before marriage. And since I want to have sex before marriage, I'm going to pretend like this being doesn't exist. And that's fine. I'm going to burn in hell forever. But I really want to have sex before marriage. That's how it's presented in Christianity. That's how it was presented to me. that people just want to go out drinking and having sex and doing drugs and whatever else, while they secretly deep down know that God exists. And of course, this is not true. And especially when you look at all the different, thousands of religions that exist out there, and each one, all of their adherents are 100% sure that their God is the one true God. So the fact is that God could easily make it clear that he was God, instead of making it this sick game where you have to try and figure it out. If you get it wrong, you're going to be tortured for eternity. But hey, figure it out. So how are we to choose him if he made it so we have to spend our lives arguing about whether or not he is real? And that's a great point. I really like these points that Lilith is making. How are we supposed to choose him if he made it so that we have to spend our lives arguing about whether or not he is real? Shouldn't he have taken care of that first step so we could instead spend our lives figuring out whose side we actually want to be on? And that's the point that, I was trying to make, where God could easily make it crystal clear that he is God and he is the one true God. And then people could choose whether they want to be on God's side or not. But there wouldn't have to be this argument about whether God exists or not. And there's no answer. There's no reason that one can give to explain this. There's no logical reason that one can give to explain this. And the idea here is that when you look at this, you can know for sure that this God doesn't exist, because there's no answer to this. I mean, the only other alternative is that it is an evil God. I don't believe that an evil God exists, but just for completeness' sake, either this God does not exist at all, or it's an evil God, because there is no answer to this. And this is one of those things where you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to go, oh, well, I don't know. What if he does exist? He doesn't, because it's logically impossible for a God that is supposedly all-loving, all-knowing, and all-powerful to allow you to go to hell and not make it clear that he exists. There is absolutely no way for that to be true. It is inconsistent with the properties that this God is claimed to have. The properties of all-knowing, all-loving, and all-powerful. And you can know that an all-loving God wouldn't do this, because I wouldn't do it. And I'm not an all-loving, omniscient, all-powerful being. I mean, ultimately, we are. But at least in our finite human forms at the moment. And what about you? Would you do that? Would you make your existence an enigma and torture anyone who didn't believe in your existence, even though you provided no evidence for it? Of course you wouldn't do that. No person in their right mind would do that. And yet people believe that a supposedly all-loving God would do this. This is not logically possible. It all means to me that their God, if he is real, has failed them. He told them to evangelize the world and then make the task so difficult that many of them in history gave up trying to use logic and instead took over regions by force, making everyone become a Christian. And that's absolutely right. We see this throughout history, all the atrocities in the name of Christianity, the burning of witches, the persecution of heretics, supposed heretics, supposed witches, and the forceful conversion of people to Christianity. You think that would really be necessary? The fact that they had to have slaves to further Christianity. Christianity supported slavery, by the way. And emperors like Constantine having to champion their cause for it to spread means that God sent them on a horrific mission, It's one that would eventually make everyone who doesn't follow them resent them as they shove their ideas in our faces with no proof whatsoever to them. And one of the things that I see, here's the thing. I hate Christianity in terms of how Christianity is defined and presented today. I don't hate the teachings of Jesus. I think the teachings of Jesus, for the most part, are fantastic, and I support a great number of them. I think Jesus Christ was likely an individual that actually existed, didn't perform miracles, but actually existed, and was a highly conscious, highly intelligent, highly aware individual who was trying to spread a message of peace and unity and higher awareness. And I support the message of Christ. I do not support Christianity whatsoever. Christianity is a false light and a misrepresentation of Christ's teachings to the utmost degree. And Jesus Christ would certainly not be a Christian. In fact, today, if Jesus were to return, Christians would likely label him as the Antichrist. Because what did Jesus do? Jesus overturned the religion that was in his day. He presented an alternative to, the rules and the commands of that time. And today, he would see what Christianity has become and what Christianity is and want nothing to do with it, and be preaching the opposite of it. And when it comes to Christians, I don't hate Christians. I feel sorry for Christians, and I look at Christians as, being locked into an ideology. And, I think that is very unfortunate. And I really feel for them because I grew up Christian and I know how difficult it is. So a lot of those people who are going out there evangelizing and preaching and saying, hey, you need to stop doing this or you're going to go to hell. Yes, that's extremely annoying and very disruptive. But think about it from their perspective. From their perspective, they believe that you are going to be tortured for eternity. And so in their mind, they're trying to do everything in their power to stop you from being tortured for eternity. So you can kind of understand, if you put yourself in their shoes, you'd probably be doing the same thing. If you legitimately believed that, everyone around you was going to be tortured for eternity unless they understood this certain thing, you'd probably be going out there trying to get people to understand it. And so while it is very much offensive when people come to you and say you're a sinner and want to pray for you and all that, and it's not okay, I understand why they're doing it and where they're coming from. But it's just a testament to what Christianity does and what Christianity causes to happen in the world. So when we take a look at Christianity in general, which declares that a supposed all-loving, all-knowing, all-powerful God will send you to hell for all eternity if you don't believe in him, yet provides zero evidence for its existence, then you can know for sure that this being doesn't exist, or it's an evil, cruel God playing some kind of sick game or sick joke. And in that case, why would you want to have anything to do with it? But of course, I don't believe that an evil God exists. I don't think that there is any evidence for, an evil being, at least how it's defined in the Bible. We could talk about higher entities that exist and there being negative forces and things like that. I believe that that's true. I believe that there are negative, nefarious beings that exist in other domains and can possibly influence things and whatnot. But that's a completely different category, and that's a completely different topic. As we're talking about biblical mythologies and things like this, you can know that this God does not exist, because there is no way that a loving, powerful God would allow you to go to hell with no evidence for its existence. And that's one of the big reasons why I left Christianity. There's many reasons why I left Christianity, but I remember specifically that being, there's simply no answer for it. There's simply no logical answer that one can give for it. Why would a God who is all powerful and all loving make it extremely difficult to know if he is God or not and send you to hell if you get it wrong? There's no answer to that. And so you can be confident in stepping away from Christianity. And you don't have to worry about God actually existing or anything like that, because you know that God can exist. It's not possible, because a loving God would not do that. End of story. Well, my friends, I think we're going to end it there, but I hope you enjoyed that. I have a lot more videos, and we're going to be talking more about, God and Gnosticism. If you enjoyed that, check out my playlist on, I have videos on religious trauma syndrome, RTS, Gnosticism, etc. Go check them out. Please like and subscribe. It helps out a lot. And if you enjoy my work and want to support this channel and see it grow, support over on Patreon, patreon.com/MorgueOfficial, and you'll get access to all of our members-only videos. We're having a members-only video in just a few minutes called The Secret Connection Between Hinduism and Quantum Mechanics. That's going to be a great one. So you can get access to that by supporting on Patreon on any tier, or tier 2 or higher on YouTube. Helps out a lot. And remember, this isn't church. You don't have to support monetarily. Don't feel like you have to. There are plenty of free ways you can support, but I do appreciate it, and it's a great way if you want to help and see this channel grow. And I want to give a shout out to everyone who does support, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, the Halloween Mom, DB, Enki, Nusalina, Paul Rogers, Eric Fire, Massam, Christopher Smith, and everyone else. Thank you very much.